Hi guys, it's Kami with Timberlane Studio, and today I'm going to teach you how to make murder hornets. No, not actually murder hornets. I'm going to teach you how to make a copper honeybee. Isn't it pretty? So I'm going to show you how to do this today, and it's a relatively easy process. Something I came up with is kind of cool, but you can buy this kit on my website if you want to learn how to make this for your own home or for a friend, or just, to kill some time during social distancing and all that jazz. So come along with me. I'm going to show you how to make a bee. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna need for this project is a silicone craft mat and the Timberlane Studio Copper Toolkit. But first things first, we're gonna get started here. So you have your craft mat, and out of the toolkit, there are two particular tools that we're gonna be using. The first is this medium point metal stylus with a rounded end, and the second is this one that has like a pizza cutter wheel on the other end. Those are the two tools that we're going to be using for this project. And of course, we're also going to need our copper bee form. You can buy a sheet of copper and cut out your own bee, or you could buy a bee from my website. They're all cut out for you already. But you want to get your bee out and kind of just smooth it out and make sure that it's nice and flat. If there's any little areas that poke up, it's, you just kind of flatten it down. But you're gonna flip it over, because what we're gonna be doing is working on the eyeballs of the bee very first. And we're gonna take that medium point metal stylus to create the eyeballs. And what I like to do is right where the head meets the arm, I'm going to draw like a half circle all the way from that point to the top of the little antenna. So I'm just gonna draw a little half moon type crescent moon shape almost on both sides. And I do it light at first because you don't wanna go too hard in case you mess it up. But then once you get your line down, you're gonna wanna go and retrace that using a really firm hand, so you are really pressing that copper through to the other side, because we're all about making a 2D shape look more three-dimensional here. So lots of pressing going on that's happening. So after you get those half moons done, we're going to take the opposite end of that metal tip tool, and we are going to just press in the center of one of the eyeballs and rotate around and around in that eyeball until you are really getting a nice divot that's starting to form. And the whole idea of this is just pressing that eyeball out to the other side. And you can see on the video that I'm lifting up the wing a little bit, just to kind of give myself a little bit more area to work on that eyeball, just to really press it out. So I'm going all the way out to the edge using that rounded tool to push that copper all around. And we really want to keep it nice and smooth. So when you first start doing this, you're going to notice that there's lots of lines or lots of like marring that starts to happen on the copper, but that's okay. That means you're pressing hard enough. But what you really want to do is make sure that you smooth it out with that tool, just by pressing and kind of rubbing it back and forth and turning it around. So if you turn it around to the other side, you should have like a nice dome that forms. So I'm gonna just keep smoothing it out until it pops out really nicely, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the other eye just the same exact way. And you really want to get that rounded plastic tool right around that outer edge. Just really press it so that that outer edge kind of curves in on itself. Now, this area that we're working on right now, where we are pressing that copper through the other side, this is called the private side. This is the side that is going to get mounted to the board and the world is not going to see. And then the opposite side of this, where the eyes are like kind of popped out, that's called the public side. Public side, private side. So the private side is where we are forming most of our lines and where we're pressing right now. So all right, so from the public side, you should have these nice rounded eyes. What you're gonna do is take that metal tip tool and just kind of trace around the curvature of the eyeball, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Just kind of cleans everything up. It looks real nice. And once you have that line done on either eyeball, what we're gonna do is flip it over to that private side and that little nose, that little snout of the bee, we're just gonna press with that metal tip tool several lines just through the center of that, that nose, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth and shape and a little bit of texture too. It looks just like that. Okay. All right, so from the public side, what we're going to do is kind of draw our body of our bee, and we're gonna wanna make it kind of fat and fluffy. So we're using that metal tip tool working on the public side, so the eyeballs should be popping out towards you. But we are going to start at the head of the bee and just kind of curve a line down that separates the wing from the body. And you really wanna make it a nice rounded line, because we're trying to create the illusion of roundness on a flat surface. So when you get to the bottom of the rounded lines where the waist of the bee is, you really want to kind of have a nice scooped line that kind of, you know, tightens in on that waist. And then what you're going to do is you're going to give your bee a little belt. So again, I'm using the curved lines on the outer edges where the legs are and just kind of curving that line inward. And then I'm going to do the same type of thing, just drawing 2 lines on either side of the abdomen. I'm drawing a very gentle center line down the abdomen of this bee just to kind of give me a point of where the center is. But we're gonna create kind of like a really lazy W shape, I guess you could call it, where you start from the outer edge of the abdomen and then you go up into the middle line and then down to the other side. And we're gonna make 3 lines with this shape. And this is just gonna give our bee a little bit more roundness, so it's not so like flat looking. But the first thing that we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be doing the same type of texture technique on all of these sections. So we're gonna start on the private side of our bee, and we are going to use our metal tipped medium point stylus for this. And I'm just going to go back and I'm actually retracing my lines to make it look a little bit chunkier. I like a chunky bee. So if you need to do that too, do that before you actually start on the actual texture step. All right, so starting from the private side, all right, so your eyeballs should be like little concave little areas. We're gonna take that metal tip tool and we're going to use like parentheses type shapes. So out, like curved out to the right and curved out to the left. And we're just going to start pressing pretty hard. You wanna press pretty hard. These little lines down either side of the bee. So you're gonna start in the center, work your way out to the right, get back to the center, work your way out to the left. And we're just gonna continue doing that in several segments. So I'm here working on the second row of these, curving it out to the right and getting all the way to the very edge. And you can see how hard I'm pressing here. And I'm not holding my tool like how I would hold a pen. I'm actually kind of gripping it really tight in my hand, because you do have to press pretty hard. So I'm pressing and I'm just creating a little bit more shape on that little bee body there. And I'm now on the 3rd row here, and you're just moving that copper around, and just be patient with yourself. Don't try to rush it. Go slow. And if there's areas where you have 2 lines that are kind of far apart, you can put a line in between both of those. But we're just building layers of lines here to give the illusion of like bee fluff. So just gonna take your time, build out that line work. When you get to that outer edge of the wing, just try to really make those lines on that outer edge of that body kind of deep, just so that we have this nice little popped out little body that we're creating. So now I have 3 rows and I'm going for 4. So as you can see, I'm creating like that kind of parentheses type shape first, and then working out to the right and then out to the left. And we're just gonna do that all the way down to the bottom of this little segment of our bee. When you get to the bottom, you want to definitely, I'd like to flip my piece upside down and press it down with your hands if it's starting to pop up a little bit. But just go from that side, and again, making sure that you take those little lines that are curved and follow along the curvature of that little waistline of that bee, that line that we had created initially. And if you have any pinching of the copper, just be a little careful, like you don't press too hard because you can't poke holes through this, but just go and take areas that need to have a little extra line work done and go in there with that metal tip tool and just kind of add extra lines here and there wherever you see fit. If there's anything that's raised that you could potentially put a line through, you can definitely do that. And really there's no like super right way to do this. Just have fun with it and kind of roll with it and see where you're at, because it's a fun little project here. All right, so we're gonna flip it over to that public side now, and we can see we've created this nice pop of texture and everything. So the next thing we're gonna do for this is we are going to section off like where the wings are. So I'm just gonna run a line on either side of that little body just to make it look like the wings are separated a little bit, and it just cleans everything up with that bee body. Looks pretty good so far. All right, so the fun thing is we get to do this same type of technique through all the different parts of that abdomen. Now, this little bee belt area that I have, depending on how thick or thin you created yours, sometimes you can only fit one row of those little parentheses lines. Sometimes you can fit two. But I'm just gonna go in here because it's kind of a little bit thinner, but I'm just gonna do those parentheses lines of just one row and just curve them from top to bottom, working my way from the center to outward to the right, and then from the center outward to the left. And again, I'm taking my time for this. I'm not rushing it. I'm making sure that really when I stick my tool into the copper that it's in the spot that I want it to be, and then I press it down. So now we have this nice little bee belt that we formed. Flip it back on over to the public side, and then take that same metal tip tool and just kind of trace around that area that you've just created. Just kind of clean everything up, and it makes it its own little section. And next, we're gonna go ahead and do the same technique all the way to the bottom of the bee. And remember, after every section, to just take that metal tip tool and trace along All right, excellent. Now we see we have this really nice textural heavy bee body. So the next thing we're gonna do is make these wings gorgeous. So what I like to do, there's an upper lobe and a lower lobe of the wing, and I like to run a line from the center of the bee body, like the middle round part, and I get a center point there, and then I just take a line and I run it kind of in a gentle arc from the middle of the body out to where that second and first lobe meet on the wing. So there's like a little divot in the wings that you can see. And then I do whatever I do on one side, I do on the other side, because I like to work in symmetry when it comes to stuff like this. So I have these two arcing lines that I've created on our bee wing. And the next thing that we're gonna be doing is adding a little bit more wing texture. So I'm going to be working, this is all done on the public side here. So I'm going to be taking a line that runs parallel to that first line that we put down, and then it kind of shoots off to the top of the wing. And then I take another one, kind of like an L shape, and then I just join that line and run it off the edge of the wing. Now this part here, it's kind of big, so I'm going to take another parallel line to that second segment and then just run a line off the edge, and I'm gonna turn this edge of the wing into two different segments there. So whatever I did on this wing, I am going to go on the other side and do it to the other part of the wing as well. And it's good to do that while it's fresh in your mind, not just finish one wing and then move on to the other, because then sometimes you're like, oh shoot, I did this one thing and I don't know exactly how I did it, and then to try to mimic it on the second wing sometimes doesn't work. So usually I'll do a technique on one side and then I'll go ahead and do the same technique on the other side. And it doesn't always have to be exactly perfect, but it should look similar. So now I have those lovely segments there. So what I'm gonna do now is the same thing on that lower lobe, but the lower lobe is smaller, so we don't need to have as many. But again, just taking that like L-shaped design and just running it along the wing, the lower portion of the wing. And you do want to have really good firm pressure for this. If you don't have firm pressure, it's just not going to turn out as like dynamic and alive looking as if you were to use it with a really heavy hand. So now we're going to flip it over to the private side, and we are going to enhance our current design that we have. And it's really easy to do this. You just take that same metal tip tool, and we are going to mimic the lines that we already put down. So we're not going over them. We're putting the lines like right next to them and just kind of shadowing them. And what this is doing on the opposite side is giving us a little bit of more depth where light and shadow can kind of play, and then you have this really beautiful end result of where this copper is shining and creating a little bit of an illusion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on all of the segments that I've created so far. All right, so now you can see we have this really beautiful design that we've laid down on the wings. The next thing we're gonna do is just kind of amp up the texture with this, and it's a really easy way to do this is by a little bit of burnishing. So we're gonna use that rounded end of that tool, and in the negative space of those segments, we're just gonna gently rub in those little areas. You don't have to do this very hard, just a real gentle rub, but you want all those lines going in the same direction. So don't do like one where it's horizontal and then one where it's vertical. You want them all kind of running in the same type of angle, wherever you're coming off with where you're burnishing, you want that same burnishing to come off at the same angle so you have a nice uniform appearance there. So again, like what I did to one side, I'm doing to the other side so that I have good continuity. Okay, so we have our wings all kind of designed. Now I want to bring a little bit more depth into this so that initial line that we separated the lower lobe and the upper lobe, I'm going to flip it over to the private side, and I'm gonna run a line alongside of that line just to give us a little bit more texture. I'm all about the texture. And then I'm gonna bring another line and just kind of like shadow the lines that we already have there. Now when I'm doing this, it's just to give a little bit of extra depth to how the wings appear. When you're doing your design, you can do whatever you want to your wings. This is a guideline to show you like how I do it. I mean, I will go off on a tangent with a lot of these things and make them, you know, put different shapes and stuff on our wings, but this is just a way to show you how to create a little bit of extra depth and dimension on your piece. Speaking of which, we're gonna use this little pizza cutter tool. It's a lot of fun. There's little teeth in there. And then when you work with this wheel on the private side, on the public side, you'll get these really cool little dots and divots and stuff. Or actually, you'll get like little bumps on the public side. So what I'm doing is I'm just finding a line that I put down on the private side, and I'm just rotating this little wheel and following along those lines. And it just gives a really nice extra textural pop to our wings, and you can see there how pretty that is. And then when you pop it over to the public side, you can see that it's popping out towards you on that public side. So you have these really beautiful little areas of interest that can take a relatively simple design and just kind of give it a little extra pizzazz. I'm all about like just playing around because copper is cathartic, and moving it around with metal tools is a lot of fun. And this gauge is a really nice gauge. It's not too light, it's not too soft. It's just enough to really make it challenging enough to have it be fun, but not overly challenging where you want to give up and not have just say, no, I'm not gonna do this anymore. So again, with that little pizza cutter wheel, I am going on one wing, and then I'm doing the same thing on the other wing, giving our bee a little extra pizzazz. And if you don't like extra pizzazz, you know what? You do you. Nobody's gonna judge you. It's a craft. You make your bee however you wanna make your bee. I'm just having a good old time going in there. Like pretty much any place that has line work I'm going in and I'm just making it extra fancy. Try it on the public side, try it on the private side, see what you like better. It's all a matter of personal choice. Okay, we got a pretty looking bee here. All right, let's get going on to the legs. We've got 6 of them, and this is like probably my least favorite part because the legs can get a little pokey. But what we're gonna be doing is using that medium point metal stylus with that rounded end. In all of these legs, we are going to bisect the legs, which means to like draw a line in half. And what we're gonna be doing is starting from where the body meets the leg, get a line and just go and follow the shape of the leg with a line. Just make sure that it's split in 2 and do your best. It doesn't have to be exact. And just follow the shape of the leg. So that top leg has a little bit more of a bend to it than the lower leg, but we're just gonna do that on all of the legs. Once you get that done, now we're just gonna take little lines that start from the center and go out to the right. And we're gonna go all the way down, just creating these little, kind of an illusion of a hairy little bee leg. And then we're going to do the same thing on the left side too. So lines that start in the center and go off to the right, down into the right, and then down into the left. And we're gonna do that 6 times because the bees got 6 legs. So we're gonna go and make our bees have hairy little pollinating legs. So once you have all your legs all harried up, what you can do is that line that we used to kind of pinch the leg in half, we're actually going to use our hands and we are going to pinch these legs back. This is working from the public side just to give it the illusion of 3 dimensions. So be careful with this. If you need to grab a needle nose pliers to pinch the legs, go ahead and do that. I have pretty tough callousy hands, so it doesn't really bother me as much. But if you haven't done this before, you know, you could potentially cut yourself if you're not careful or smart. Be smart, be careful. But just pinch these little legs and just give your bee a little bit more of a nice little leg shape. And once we finish our little upper arms with that same type of texture, we are going to then work on the antenna, which are similar but different. Okay, so we have our little antenna. So we want to bisect these with a line as well. This is still on the private side. So we're gonna start real close to the head and just go slow and careful and just get a line just splitting that antenna in half. And like I said, go slow. Don't rush yourself for this because that's how you can make mistakes. But go nice and slow, and that center line that you have there on the antenna will be a way that you can bend back that copper to make that antenna kind of thin. Now with those little bee arms and antenna, I grabbed my little needle nose pliers for this because they are smaller than the legs. And I just gently take a little portion of it and kind of bend it in on itself to make sure that it can fold and give the illusion of a little bit of roundness. So you can see I'm just kind of working on the antenna with those. You can pinch them together if you want. Just take your time and go slow and kind of feel what the copper is doing. Don't try to like force it too much in one direction or the other. But you just gently kind of pinch it all together. And then you can go back in and kind of give it a little bit of a bend a little bit later too. All right, and then the last thing I like to do just to finish everything off is if there's any like super pokey parts, I like to just take a really sharp scissors. I have a Fiskars titanium coated scissors that I use for this. And I like to just snip off any areas that just don't look that great. So I will start with the little antenna. I'll go on the little points of the legs and just gently snip off any extra little curls that I see. And voila, there we go. Our bee is ready for the next step. Let's get on out of here and fly away and go get it done. The next thing for the patina, what we're going to be using in the kit, there is a bottle of antiquing patina in there. We're gonna get a paper towel and our bee and our antiquing patina, and we're just gonna spray it on the surface of the copper. Now this is a very quick chemical reaction. It does not take very long for this to work, but I'm gonna give a nice big dose of this chemical on top, and I really want to soak it in so that it starts to turn that really nice rich brownish black color. And wherever those little droplets land, that's where you're going to see color, that dark rich brown color. So you can see this is a kind of a light coating that I'm doing. Now I'm going in and I'm like, you know what, I want more. I'm going to really soak this guy. And as you can see, it doesn't take very long for that color to start to form. But what is really cool is like you can leave it on there for, 5 to 10 minutes and have it get really, really black. Or if you don't want to wait that long, you don't have to either. You can take another paper towel, and what I'm going to be doing is just drying it off, because the color is a decent amount of color. It doesn't have to be, I don't need it to be overly black. This nice rich brown color looks really works really nice for this. So I'm just gonna take a paper towel and pretty much wipe off the surface of our bee so it's nice and dry. And then I'm gonna let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure that it's thoroughly dried off before we go on to sanding. Okay, we have our nice aged copper bee. It looks pretty awesome just this way. So if you like it this way, you can totally leave it this way. But what I like to do to enhance it a little bit is to actually slough off some of that dark patina to expose the raw copper underneath, because I think the contrast is very beautiful. So in the kit that I have, we have a nice little 220 grit sandpaper. And what I'm going to be doing is I fold it in half, just so it's a nice smaller workable, well actually quarters, a smaller workable area here. And I'm just going to slough off some of that brown patina to expose some of the raw copper underneath, because that brightness of the copper and the deep tones of the oxidation, it's a really beautiful classic combination. And I'm going to do the same thing on the wings as well. And the eyeballs too. So I like to have my bees have eyeballs that are nice and coppery bright. So I will take the time to just go in one direction when you're sanding the eyes, because you don't want to have like cross hatching and have it look all funky. It doesn't turn out as well. So just make sure you're going in one direction when you're sanding the slough off the eyes. And you have these nice bright copper spot, like eyeball spots. It's a cool little focal point. And depending on like your eye shape, it can give your bee a little bit of a personality too, which I think is a lot of fun. All right, so we got some nice shiny eyes. Now I'm gonna take it on the wings, and all those little bumps with that pizza cutter wheel that we did, when you take the sandpaper off, you can expose those, and the patina gets stuck in between, so you get this really nice textural thing. But I'm just taking that sandpaper and I am sloughing off actually quite a bit of that patina to expose some of that raw copper underneath, and you can see on that part of the wing there. Just want to brighten that up a little bit, because we have some nice design elements on the wing to really make it stand out by using that contrast of that really bright copper and the really deep patina. So you can decide however you want to have your bee, however you sand it down, that's totally your deal. But just to kind of show you what you can do with it, because I'm actually taking a pretty heavy hand with some of the sanding, just to show you the beauty that you can have with just the contrast of the brightness of the copper and the deepness of that patina. And also folding your sandpaper in half and using the edge of the sandpaper to get into like little crevices if you need to. That's a good way to kind of get that sandpaper into areas that are hard to get with just a big flat piece. There you go. Once your bee is all sanded, I suggest taking like a paper towel and just wiping off excess patina and just making sure it's nice and clean. You can also seal the bee with Rust-Oleum gloss clear coat to keep it from oxidizing any further. If you choose to not seal your piece, it will get darker over time. But if you really like that contrast of that bright copper and that warm, rich patina, I would definitely say Rust-Oleum gloss clear to preserve it. But that's pretty much it for the actual work part of the bee. The next thing is mounting. So mounting is really easy. In the kit, I include a really nice mount board that's stained with a honeycomb texture on there. It's got a cool keyhole hanger on the back, and it's got a wood block that you are going to, it's double-sided with sticky tape. So you're gonna peel off one side of the wood block sticky tape and place it down on a flat surface, and then stick your bee on top of that and just kind of press and make sure that wood block is completely obscured by your bee's body. So just press that bee onto that wood block until it's stuck. It's pressure sensitive, and it doesn't take very long for it to stick. But then once you have your bee secured to the wood block, then take the other side and take the double-sided tape off, and then take your mount board and position your bee anywhere on your mount board. So if you want it, straight up and down, like how I show in the video, absolutely do it that way. But if you want it to be off to the side or off to the edge of your piece, feel free to put your bee wherever you want. But after that, that's pretty much it, and you're done, and you just created a really cool copper bee. So thanks for coming along on this fun little craft. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the link below. I would love to see more people doing this kind of craft. It's a lot of fun. It's cathartic. Copper is one of my favorite mediums to work with. So share it with your friends, and come along next time for my next project that we're going to be doing. It'll be lots of fun, I promise.